I pressed record just so Meta would say it again.
I'll say it again.
Say it again.
Does Gabby not give Adriana Lima right now? Look at her in this makeup. Like,
I don't know what
I mean,
you're
not like you
saying.
ever need makeup, but you look drop dead gorgeous.
Thank you. I took new headshots today. If anyone's wondering why I don't look like a mole rat, that's why. Immediately puts on a hoodie when she's done.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a mama and I've got a Maddie.
Maddie, come say hi.
Come say hi to TMB. Oh, shut up.
Mahal
I know.
is jealous. Someone's going to steal her spotlight. Just say hi.
Just the girls. It's just the girl. Oh, yeah. She loves Maddie.
She does. Maddie has big mom energy.
We're having girl time.
I'm jealous.
She said you just have big mom energy, and that's why Mahal loves you. Hi. Oh,
you do look
we wish you were here too.
Put a hat on.
She said, "Oh yeah, you can hear her."
She asked me why I put a hat on because I felt like it.
Can you hear her?
No, she can. Oh, she can.
Yeah.
I wonder if the audience can hear the ASMR content that's coming out of Mahal.
I know. Speaking of sex, Mahal's just making out with Maddie as much as humanly possible.
You do look gorgeous.
Doesn't she?
Thank you.
Even though your camera's blurry.
Yeah.
My camera's so blurry.
It's just when we record, it gets blurry for us, but then the quality is good once we post it. Oh my God. Speaking of technical difficulties.
Jesus, Meadow, okay. I'm going to take it away. Take it away.
Love you. Thank you.
When I tell you guys that this was if you guys wait until the end, by the way, of every single episode and hear like a little thing, does Kay still put that at the end of every episode? It's
yes, at the end. Do you know that? You're still at the end of every episode?
I do.
Every Monday.
Every Monday. Maddie making sure that we say what we need to say. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. We got to keep this short and sweet because this is quite the fucking episode for you guys. Can I just tell you that Meadow and I have recorded up until this point, like 50 episodes?
Yeah.
Almost. Like we're in the 40s. We're in the 40s. Never once has what happened. And of course it happened with one of the guests that we have been looking forward to recording with since we started this podcast.
Yeah.
Okay? Emily Morse is here.
Yeah. Sex with Emily is here.
You might know her as Sex with Emily.
She's everything you want her to be and more. Like the most beautiful, kind, intelligent woman in the world.
Okay.
And keep going.
Yes. I had the pleasure of interviewing her. We discussed her coming on the podcast. She is so kind and generous, like Meadow just said.
Oh my God.
Every technical difficulty that you could have possibly think of in your brain happened during this recording. And then some. Tell them what happened when we finished recording.
It was so we go through this whole we had to start and stop like 6 times. There was different things. We were coming in and out in the middle of Emily's like beautiful monologues of all this gracious information. Okay, so we get off the recording. We're like, that's the best episode we've ever done.
Bar none.
And we check our little system that we record on, and it says our recording is 1 minute and 37 seconds long. And we talked for an hour and a half.
So fun.
So Gabby and I started crying, and we called our editor, Kay, who you've heard us talk about, who we adore. And Kay saw the same thing we saw, and we were like, it's a goner. We're going to have to ask her to come back. We have to do the whole thing over. We were really trying to
so embarrassed.
It happens to everyone. You know, it had to happen to us. We were like really trying to reconcile with it all. And then a day, 2 days later, Kay, the evil genius, I'm saying evil, I meant beautiful genius, but truly evil genius that they are. I don't know how they did this, but they found it all, the whole episode back.
Kay, I don't know what you did. Kay, if you're listening, you are because you're editing this. Kay, I don't know what you did, but my God, do I love you. Because, wow.
We worship the ground that Kay walks on.
Okay. Should we talk about what happened in this episode?
Yeah, quickly, because let's just get to it because it's so good. All right.
Let me just take a moment because if you don't know Emily, you're confused. But I will give you a quick little bio, and I'm going to read it from her website because there's so much to say. She is, first of all, Doctor of Human Sexuality. Okay? She's a doctor. She has been talking about sex on the internet before talking about sex on the internet was even remotely a thought that you could have in your brain.
Yeah.
She has the #1 sex podcast on iTunes called Sex with Emily. And she's got a SiriusXM radio show. She's a best-selling author. She is our fairy godmother of everything sex.
Absolutely.
She makes us feel comfortable and empowered to talk about our bodies and sex and everything in between. And we talked about a whole lot.
Oh my
about a
gosh,
whole
we
lot.
talked about so much. I mean, one of my favorite things we talked about was using your orgasm to manifest. Obviously, that's my favorite thing. We talked a lot about
Mhm.
masturbation. We talked about our other favorite thing, healing and like discovering having like a sexual healing after having trauma. We also did a cutie little Q&A because all y'all love to talk about sex with us. So we did a Q&A from the audience and we talked about things like how to communicate with your partner, how to talk to them about your needs. Oh, a compliment sandwich,
Oh,
which is
God,
a
I love
very
a
good tip
compliment
for talking
sandwich.
about sex. We talked
Mhm.
about what to do when your partner tells you they have erectile dysfunction. I mean, we talked about it all.
We sure
went
did.
everywhere.
And the majority, if not all of the questions that we asked were from you guys.
Yeah.
We probably like smushed some together into one nice meaty
Mhm.
question for her. But like this was really an opportunity for us to just be facilitators for you
Absolutely.
guys. And let us know if you guys want us to be doing more stuff like this where like we ask you, we kind of give you a hint as to the topic that we're going to be talking about and have you guys send in questions because obviously we want TMB to be a place that's actually resourceful, not just entertaining or a clusterfuck, whatever it is you think it is.
We still have so many questions left for Emily, and Emily so graciously has already agreed to come back. So as you're listening to this and more sex questions come up, send them to us because we will put them
Oh,
on
please.
reserve because
Yes.
Emily is coming back.
Oh God. If I could just like be her roommate.
Oh, stop it.
I'm like, Emily, can I move into your house?
Adopt us.
Also, she did this in the middle of a move.
Oh my gosh. Just the kindest woman in the entire world.
I do want to say, first of all, can you tell we're scatterbrained?
Yeah.
A. B, I do want to say that the sound quality on this episode, because of our technical difficulties,
Yes.
was not the best thing we've ever had.
Yeah.
A lot of going in and out. Both of our Wi-Fis were just actually telling us to go fuck ourselves the entire time. So
Kay has made
sorry.
it so that hopefully you cannot tell, but also please be gracious with us because we're thrilled that we even have an episode for you today.
Yeah. So you're welcome that it's not just an hour and a half of Meadow and I crying.
We'll thank Kay for you.
Enjoy the episode with Emily.
Get to it.
Emily, thank you so much for doing this.
I'm really excited
We're
to be
so
here.
happy to have you.
My favorite topic. Mental health, sex, it's all connected.
Yeah.
It all really is. And just like we were telling you before we hit record, like our audience asks us so many questions about sex and relationships. And so we really just took this opportunity to ask them, like, what do you want to know? We're having someone amazing on. Please send all your questions. So towards the end, we're going to get to like some more rapid fire community Q&A type of things.
Okay, cool. I'm in. Let's do it. Let's help them.
Amazing. We start, though, all of our episodes with asking our guests what they're currently unpacking. It can be anything. It can be light. It can be heavy. It can be in between, whatever you're feeling.
You're quite literally moving.
Yeah.
So it could be that.
Can I go with the literal?
Yeah,
I just
can.
moved into a new home. No, I actually like going. I like going deep. I like going surface. But really, what am I unpacking right now? I would say no. I just moved to a new home, which is really amazing. So I am unpacking it. It was a big move to just kind of land in a new space. I think I was kind of living in a place that just didn't really feel like me for a while. So I finally found a home that has more space, and I'm loving that. So I'm unpacking that. But I would say what I'm really truly unpacking, because let's be real here, is I think I've always been I'm a kind of a workaholic, and I've always had a really big passion and drive for many years to sort of change the way people think about sex and to make sex less taboo and get people to prioritize their pleasure. I started this podcast. This is heading into my 17th year.
Wow.
And I know, right? You're like,
I need your skincare routine. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
I know, right? Long freaking time. And so I still work a lot, and I still love it because there's still so much work to do. But also, I'd love to kind of figure out that whole elusive balance. How do you still do all the things you want to do and have time for more pleasure, which is what I'm all about, getting people to prioritize their pleasure and liberate the conversation around sex. I still work at is it possible to take a half day on Friday? Make more time for other things. So what does that actually look like? Because sometimes I think that we all have those choices to decide when we want to work, when we don't. You can always be more efficient. And some things I think are just habits that are really in in my tissues, right? Like the whole, body keeps the score, the issues in the tissues. I feel like some things are I won't know how else to be unless I'm really, really busy doing so many things. So I'm really consciously trying to work and look at my schedule and say, do I have to really be doing this many things? Can I look ahead and plan so there is more time for creativity, and for
Cool.
friends and for love and all the things.
Cool.
So that's what I'm looking now consciously.
And that only supports what you do. It only supports like your practice, and like that stillness is how you discover where in your body like those emotions are moving through. Like that's so supportive of your work anyway. So you can kind of like, at least that's how, whenever I'm struggling with the balance, I always try to like reframe it like, well, I have to do this in order to be productive. You know what I mean? You try to like trick your brain into believing it's for work when you're actually just learning to relax.
Exactly. Well, I've also learned that pleasure is actually productive. So and when pleasure, I don't just mean sex, but we'll get into it. But pleasure is really about like what makes me feel good. It's spending time with friends. It's going on a hike. It's, maybe it's like decorating my house or walking my dog. And then I look at the week and I think if pleasure is productive, because the more pleasure I have in my life, the more things I'm doing that I love, I'm so much better at everything else.
Yes.
So then I think if that's the truth, which it is, and I'm actually writing a book right now. My book's due in like a month.
Oh my
about
gosh.
This. So it's like, how do I really do that? How do I really so that I'm looking ahead and then kind of reverse engineering my life and saying, this is the priority for the week. How many times am I doing things that are actually for me?
Yeah.
And then it makes everything else, kind of flow better.
How is the writing process for you? How's it been?
The writing process, it's been really intense. It's been a long process. I'm almost nearing the end of it, but it's been really good and really hard and painful and ups and downs and triumphs, but I'm getting towards the end of it now where I'm just very, very excited to get the book out.
Cool. Oh my gosh.
It'll be out in June.
I cannot wait.
We're going to have to do a little TMB book club.
I know.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. We
Yeah.
really do. Can you tell us a little bit about the book, or like, have you not disclosed too much?
I can. It's funny. Like the last thing that I have not decided on is a title yet, because there's a few things happening, like logistically with the title. But the title, it's really about a new way of thinking about sex that I think is going to change the way people understand their sexuality, and it's really about pleasure. It's about prioritizing pleasure in a way that's very, very tangible, and I think it's going to kind of that pleasure is presence and pleasure is productivity. And there's some great formulas in there for people understanding themselves on a deeper level, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and how all these things sort of factor into being sexually healthy. Because I think for so long that people are like, when it comes to sex, people always have very specific questions, right? Like, how do I spice it up? Or why can't I have an orgasm? And the thing is, it's not like a quick fix. Like if someone came and they're like, well, I'm feeling depressed. Like you wouldn't just say take medication. You might say like medication's helpful, but get therapy, make all these changes. But with sex, for some reason, it always feels like it was just one area where people are just like, I don't got a lot of time. What's a quick fix? So I figured out a diagnostic tool that's going to help people. I don't want to say what it is yet, but it's a really interesting approach that people on their own can now look at these factors and figure out where they're at sexually and kind of empower them to answer their own questions and set them on a path with sex.
Wow.
And help them for the rest of their lives.
That's so exciting and going to be so useful because first of all, I love that you use the word tangible because I think that so many people overthink sex and they always look to others, which is helpful to like, ask their questions. But then we sort of end up doing things that may not feel natural to us because we're just like using other people's ways of being, I guess, and not sort of like getting in tune with ourselves. It goes back to that idea of figuring out what actually feels good for you. And learning to explore from there. Because I think a lot of times when people like ask, when we like meet people who talk a lot about sex and experts in the sex industry, like it's all sort of like, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's like
elusive.
Kind of like, yeah, it's like elusive. And it's very much like almost like elitist in a way where it's like, well, if you haven't reached like this level, like I'm going to use all of these big words and all these toys and all these things and I'm just going to throw it at you. And people are like, well, I'm just trying to figure out how to like switch positions.
Especially
you know what I
when
mean? Like very basic.
is so tied into it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So I love that you're like breaking it down to the basics. I think that's so important. People like skip so many steps.
Yeah. They do. And it is like, I love what you said because it really is about finding what feels good to you and then do more of that. It's not like, and everybody does something different. Like I always say, if you put like 100 women in a room, and you ask them all to masturbate, for example, which would actually be really interesting, have them all touching themselves, they would all be doing something different because they'd all find out what feels good to them. But yet with sex, we think there's like one way to do it, and this will make me a great lover, and this will make my partner orgasm. But no, we have to do that inner work to find out. We can strip back the layers of everything we've known about sex, everything we've told about sex, and the book kind of helps you do that and say, going back to the basics, like who am I and what feels good to me, and then expanding from there rather than like all this information coming in and seeing what works. So just
Wow.
kind of finding it from you and then learning that, feeling good at that, and then advocating for yourself in a sexual situation. Like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
Are you down with that? I want to know what you want too, and let's create a sexual experience together. Rather than it should look this way because of porn, or my best friend liked it this way, so it might be good for us. You know, we get to create it on our own.
I also love what you said earlier, which Gabby's going to laugh at because I'm just deep into blending spirituality and psychology so much recently. So when you were like, pleasure is presence, I've been on my like, everything comes back down to being present. Like that's just the number one rule.
Yeah.
So
literally everything.
Oh my God.
Mindful. Just be mindful. That's
and
it. I'm with you.
I have so many questions for you about spirituality and sex, but before we talk about kind of like the new ways to think about it, I did want to quickly ask you, just to establish a baseline, did you ever have a sex talk and what did it look like?
Oh, did anyone ever have one with me growing up?
Yeah.
No sex talks at all.
Wow.
I had one day in 6th grade where we had sex education, and it was the boys. It was
they separate,
young boys and girls. So they didn't even separate us.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe they did for like, it was like a 6-hour thing, maybe 3 hours. Like they were like, this is what happens when you have periods, and then for men. But then we came together and it was like awkward. I remember one boy raised his hand and was like, "Can you have sex underwater?" Like that's all I remember about it. And then it was done, and the teacher was like, "Yes, you can," and that was it. So no, that was it, and then it never came up again. And certainly nothing came up about pleasure. It was all fear based. It was like,
never.
Don't get pregnant, don't get an STD, have a nice life. So, and that was it. No one talked about it again. So it was a very minimal sex talk. And the problem is that, like, and my parents were pretty like open and liberal in the sense that my mom was like, "Oh, if you have a question, ask me." But what I'm finding is that kids don't know I didn't know what to ask.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know. So no, I didn't. Did you guys have sex talks?
I can't remember mine, to be really honest. But I think it was like along those lines of like, definitely in school they did that whole separation. But I think my mom is one of those parents who like led with, "I'm very open about sex." But then like when it kind of came down to it, it was like, "What are you?" So we definitely like talked about it. It was just, I remember the masturbation conversation because I was learning about it in school. And I asked her about it, and I remember I like actually wanted to like disintegrate and just die like on this. I was mortified, mortified. She's like, "It's really normal, sweetie," but it made it sound like it was like a weird sickness that people get. That like it's normal, you'll get it, but like you'll be fine. Like that's how I like felt about it. It was so Meadow, did you?
Yeah, well, so my mom was always really. It feels similar to you, Emily. Where like my mom was really open about it, but like I never like sought it out, I guess. Like I remember even asking her probably in middle school when we had the same like sex ed class, like, "Did you ever even, how do I even know what sex is?" Like, I don't remember learning. And she would tell me, "Oh, like when you were like a 2-year-old to be like, how are babies born?" I would tell you put a penis in a vagina, it ejaculates, you make she was like, "I told you," like scientifically from when you were little. So I don't ever remember like learning about it. And then she would, oh my God, my mom would drop me off at high school, roll down all the windows, honk, and go, "Bye, honey, do lots of drugs and have lots of sex." Like that's the type of mom she was. So it was like funny and she was open. So because she was so open and forward, like that was funny, but also embarrassing. So I never really, like you, I didn't know what to ask. Like I didn't go seek it out because I was like, whatever, she's in, I don't want to hear about it from her.
You like become mortified either way. That's so interesting that, so if you never, was there like a light bulb moment where you were like, "Okay, this is what I need to be talking about. Like, this is what I'm going to do with my career"?
Yeah, that was it. It was like, well, I was always on this path to figure out what I really wanted to do in my life that was going to make change. That always felt really important to me because that's where I got the most excited.
Right.
You know, I think you're always looking for those dopamine hits when you're looking for a career. You're like, what's going to make me excited to work? Like, what am I passionate about? Like as artists or creators, I know like you're a writer, right, Gabriella? Like that's kind of your background. I don't know about you, Meadow. You're a therapist? Is that
no? I used to work for NAMI, so I'm just mental health professional, but not licensed therapist.
Okay, got it. Right. So you like kind of sort of follow your heart or your passion. And the book I read after college, the first one was like, "Do what you love, the money will follow." And it always felt really important to me, like, do what you love. So I kept kind of trying to figure out what it was. And so in my 20s, I went to University of Michigan. I'm from Michigan. And I moved to San Francisco because it was like the year of the woman. Oh, do you live there?
My whole family's from there. I lived there for years. It's my favorite place in the entire world.
She doesn't stop talking about it. She's obsessed with it.
Okay, good. I
Let's
lived
move
there
back
for 20
together.
years.
Yeah.
It might happen. I moved to LA 10 years ago, but I was there after college and I worked for Barbara Boxer and I worked in politics.
Wow.
Because I was like, there's only 2 women in the Senate and I'm going to work in politics. So that's my first career. And I loved it because I was like making change and getting people to vote. But then I was like, but this isn't quite me. So I kept kind of pivoting. And then it wasn't until I was like, in my like early 30s, I was like, oh, I want to, because I made a documentary about politics. That was like the bridge. But then I was like, what am I the most interested in? And it kept coming up to me. I was like, I was in relationships. I was a serial monogamist and the sex would be good at the beginning, good, but not great. It'll be okay. And then like about 6 months in or a year in, I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to have sex with this person anymore. Or I got bored. And then I realized I have zero information about sex. I wasn't having orgasms. I felt everybody was. I thought that I was just sort of behind the 8 ball. I'm definitely an overachiever. So I was like, I want my sex to be great. So it was like 2005 and it was like the first year of podcasting, but I had also had this idea of doing a documentary in San Francisco about, it was called Searching for Sex in San Francisco. And I was like, I'm going to go around the city and ask you about their sex life.
Yeah.
And I started to do that for a few months. It was like shooting this footage. And then I had an intern at the time and she was like, what about podcasting? I'm like, it was literally 2005. She's like, what is that? She's like, well, it's just like audio. Like you don't even need the video camera. And I was always a fan of Loveline, which was like the longest running call-in show about sex. And there was certain anonymity to just audio.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought, well, gosh, I mean, because here I was like in my 30s. I was having sex that I was okay, not great. Definitely wasn't having as much pleasure and as much orgasms. I assumed everyone else was every single time, that they knew what to do, and I had this huge deficit. Came to find out after the first podcast, so what happened to me was I invited a bunch of friends over to my place in San Francisco, had this little apartment, kitchen table, hired some guys off Craigslist to come with a big sound equipment, and I sat there and I just said, I want to interview people about sex and see what they think and what does great sex mean to them. Turns out I found out that nobody was talking about it, nobody had any information, and I wasn't alone, which also felt great. And literally there was Dr. Ruth.
Dr. Ruth was it. That was it. Yeah.
So I was like, well, that's not okay. And we need to find more people. I mean, she was great. So then I started, but then after I did that first podcast, I recorded for 6 hours and I was like, oh, this is it. This is what's going to change people's lives, change my life. Let's get the information out there. It shouldn't be so taboo. And then I've just literally been doing a podcast ever since.
Wow.
But I went back to grad school. I got my Doctor of Human Sexuality and it's taken twists and turns. I've been on the radio, done TV, written another book. But it's always been this path about sex education. I've been very passionate about it. So that's how it all happened. It was just from a need of like, why don't I know? I thought men knew. I'm like, well, they're having a good time. It seems like they're always having orgasms. So it wasn't just obviously about orgasms, but that's how it started from a place of like a deep place for knowledge and not finding there was any other place to go for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now that's obviously amazing because there's so many more people talking about it now.
Wow.
That's how it started.
I love how you talk about like the idea that you thought like you were the only, like you were just out of the loop. Because it's such a misconception.
Everyone knew more.
Everyone like there's this show out right now called Tell Me Lies, and I don't know if you've seen it or heard of it, but it's great. Anyway,
TV show or podcast?
TV show. It's a TV show on Hulu, and it like follows college students.
I'm writing it down.
It's great, very drama, great show. One of the characters in it, that is sort of part of her storyline, is she's like lying to everybody about like, she's like, oh, I come so easily. I have such quick orgasms. Like it's like, and like all of her friends are like, what do you mean? Like, what am I doing wrong? And it's this whole little storyline weaved in. And I was like, I love that they're portraying that. And it's sort of portrayed in the way of like, she just is always faking it to like pretend like so that her boyfriend thinks that he's like great at what he does. But she's like never even had an orgasm. And I feel like it's this giant misconception that like everyone else is figuring it out. Everyone else, and we have questions about that from our audience, so people are still asking.
I may reform. I faked orgasms for 10 years. Yeah. Like I would literally.
We've all done it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is no way to live. Why are they having orgasms and I'm not? So yeah, there's a whole show about it. I love it.
Can you give a quick one-liner for people listening as to why it is imperative to not fake an orgasm?
Yeah, well, right now, first of all, it's a disservice. Essentially, if you're faking an orgasm, what you're saying is, I find my partner's pleasure and enjoyment more important than my own. And you're not, because you're thinking, like, maybe you're a people pleaser, maybe you're taught, like, because I used to think, well, then sex is successful if my partner had an orgasm, because I want him to feel good or her to whoever it was with. And then, so that's one reason. It's also just a disservice to ourselves, but also it's a disservice to your partner. It's coming from a place of, of really you're basing it around like lies. You're not being, it's disingenuous. And then you're also not being fair to this partner because they're thinking, I please every woman I'm with. Like she feels amazing. So it's actually not fair to them either. How great if they knew, let me show you what works for me. Because then we're all on the same page and everyone's feeling good. Because then you're just like, you just hear from people who are like, not to put this just in gender, but typically from men who are saying like, every woman I'm with has ever had an orgasm. I was like, like I bet that's not true.
Yeah.
So it's a disservice. It's just not honest and it's not teaching. Like you could also like pay it forward and be like, okay, buddy, this isn't working for me, but here's how it works for me. You might not be my lifelong partner, but I'm going to teach you a few things about my body so we could all like have a relationship based on a place of honesty and trust rather than like lies to stroke someone else's ego.
I'm internally screaming because what I've been unpacking so much this whole past year was people pleasing. Like I used to be such a big people pleaser.
You've come so far, Meadow.
I've
really
come so
have.
far, thank you.
You really have.
And what burst the bubble for me was when I reframed it to like, oh, I'm controlling. Like if I people please, I'm controlling them. I'm controlling the narrative. I'm not giving them autonomy by not telling them the truth. This is the sex version of that. Like when you're doing that, you're like letting them walk around with an inflated ego. You're robbing them of their autonomy. You're robbing them from like an experience by lying, essentially,
Exactly.
Oh,
so true.
I love that.
So true. People pleasing. Yeah, like people. I just realized too. It's like it's sort of people pleasing is a manipulative.
Yeah.
It's a manipulative tactic because you're actually manipulating people to like you more or to control them because you're not actually giving them any honest feedback. So it's actually almost
it's manipulative. Yes, absolutely.
I'd love to know how you undid it.
Oh man. Yeah, that really.
Well, it sounds like you've made progress. Your friend,
Thank you. I have. Let's start with communication then. Like if that's our big issue is like having the confidence or the strength or the tools in order to communicate and not lie and not be controlling. Like, do you have some baseline level confidence communication tips?
Oh, yeah. I mean, communication, I think, really starts with kind of really understanding yourself. So doing your own work, understanding that you are a pattern maybe of a people pleaser or someone who's conflict avoidant, which kind of go hand in hand. And my main thing is just finding people that you feel safe and you trust, maybe even practice, right? Because it's a muscle. Practicing with friends and people that you trust and just saying like, hey, I'm kind of working on boundaries and I'm working on being real and I'm going to tell you that this thing you didn't feel great to me. So you can practice it and see like, oh, no one died. This felt great. We were able to work through it. Like, it's fine. They still love me. You're still my friend. So my thing is just like realizing and being okay to have it to be clunky in the beginning, but you realize that the things that are holding us back from being honest communicators is this mythical fear in most cases that someone's going to leave you, abandon you, and the friendship right there and the relationship. But the people that really like love you and support you or have a growth mindset are going to be like okay with it. And so I think it's just recognizing it, practicing it, and just doing it at the right time. Obviously, like you don't want to just bring in people when they're not ready for it. I have a lot of stuff on my website. I talk a lot about like timing, tone, and turf, like my 3 T's, having any awkward conversation with anybody. A lot of times we have conversations that are not the best time.
Right.
You're agitated. You're like hungry, angry, lonely. Halt, I always say. You hungry, angry, lonely, you're tired. That's not a good time in a conversation. If it's a sex conversation, you want to have it outside the bedroom. When you're going on a walk or you're going on a road trip, and then your like tone is like light and curious. How do we get curious about something? I'm not going to be judgmental, but hey, I thought it might be really good to talk about our relationship and our sex life because I think we both want to be great lovers and great communicators. So would you really be trying to do it? So I think that's some of my top rules are just finding the right place to do it and the right tone to do it. And that it's just really important to get clear on what you want to say and what your goals are and to fucking have therapy and do enough work on yourself. So, and it becomes easier over time, I believe, once you know yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, team, there is the line of mental health and sex. It's all connected. It really is. Do you remember we talked about when I interviewed you for Birdie, we talked about the compliment sandwich. And I thought it was very helpful.
Love the compliment sandwich.
Can you explain that?
The compliment sandwich is excellent. So when it comes to sex, so here's what I've also realized. You guys will appreciate this, but in writing the book, it was like, oh, you know what? Whenever we bring up sex to a partner, it could just be the simplest things like, let's use a lube. Let's try a different position. Let's talk about when we're going to have sex. Like Wednesday nights don't work for me because I got early mornings on Thursday, whatever it is. But what I realized is that sex is so triggering for people and most people don't talk about it at all. Like literally most people don't bring it up to them. Not only do their parents not talk to them, but in most relationships, we don't talk about it. That when you do bring up sex, I have found that many people go into fight or flight because it's so like, you're bringing up sex. It must mean that I've done something horribly wrong. Yeah. I'm a bad lover. I'm not lovable. And we go into this like terrible, like fight or flight. Like I'm angry or I'm mad at you or I'm leaving or it's over. So it just becomes fraught. So if you know that, knowing that it might be triggering because your partner doesn't want to be a great lover to you because literally they haven't heard anybody bring it up. It's just the subject matter that if someone brings it up at cancer, it's like, this is going to be a serious conversation. Sex feels serious and threatening for your partner. So knowing that, we can put some parameters in place using something like the compliment sandwich, where you're like, hey, you're using all the timing, tone, and turf. You found a great location. You're chilling with your partner. Your tone is relaxing and curious. And you say to them, like, let's say there's one thing that you want to give feedback. Give me one. Do you guys have anyone, like something that you might want to talk to your partner about? Is there anything you're like, I love to, or anyone's partner? Like a feedback piece, like maybe you want them to initiate more. Maybe you want it to slow down. I mean, if there's anything in real time that we could work on.
Let's look at the questions from the listeners to see if we have any that can be in the compliment sandwich. You guys asked us such good questions.
I love that.
Okay. We could maybe use this. Okay, someone says how to come with penetration. It seems like I can only really come with petting. In quotes, etc.
Petting.
So maybe talking to your partner about like.
We say it again. She's not coming with penetration.
Right.
And
she's not coming with penetration.
Petting. Like she needs her fingers. Yeah. Well, okay. So just for context here, the majority of women are vulva owners, as I say in my show. The majority of women are not going to orgasm from penetration. Only 20% of women do. 80%, 20%. And of those women, it's not every single time. And literally, just because genetically they were the way they were born, their clitoris is closer to their vaginal opening. And therefore, they're more likely to, it's not that they were like, had some like magical skills. It's literally, they won the clitoral birth lottery or whatever, like the genetic lottery. That's it. So 20% of women do, which means most of us don't. So we do have to have these conversations with our partner. So how this might go is the sandwich goes this way. The first sandwich, like the piece of bread, the top piece of bread would be like, this is where you give the compliment, right? You're like, I realize that we haven't maybe talked about our sex life lately. And I just want to say that I love when you go, so maybe she does it through petting. Maybe her fingers is how she comes. Maybe more so is what I'm hearing, or her mouth. Let's say it's a mouth thing. Let's say it's like oral sex gets her there. So she could say like, I love, our sex life. It's been so hot lately. I love the way we make out. I love the way you slowly undress me, whatever it is. You give a compliment and you say, what I'm really loving is how when you go down on me, it feels so amazing. Like that's the first thing. Like you give him a compliment about how great he is with his tongue. This guy is great with his tongue and pleasing her. And then the middle part is, and I realized that I actually haven't orgasmed to really do penetration. Well, and I love the way you feel inside of me. The penetrative part doesn't really work for me. So that would be the middle piece of the bread, like that would be the meat. So you're saying a compliment. I love all this about us. You do all these things great. And the middle part would be like, but I've realized that like, it's really not through penetration where I have the most pleasure, but it's really when you are using your tongue or your fingers, that really, really seems to get me going and that gets me over the edge. And then the final thing would be like, and so I really hope that we could kind of find ways for you to kind of incorporate more of your fingers in your mouth in the situation, because then I know I'm going to have like the most incredible orgasms and pleasure. And it's going to make me want to even, and I even want to find out more about you and what's going to make me give you the best pleasure. So does that
is such a helpful, tangible tip.
Okay.
I love the compliment sandwich.
I mean, yeah. So it's like whatever it is. It's like you're great. Hey, babe, love you. Love all of these things. Number 2 is like, and maybe we could try this because it would feel good, but here's what's really not working. And then it's like, and here's why it's going to be great for both of us. That's how I sum it up. And the other thing I want to say is, though, to finish this, round this out, is that while only 20% of women orgasm through penetration, the majority of women are going to orgasm with a mouth, hands, or toys. Those are the 3 top ways women have orgasms. Not a penis. Sorry. Truth though, but not that we don't love your penis and bring the penis in and it feels so good to be connected and penetrated, but that's not going to be my nirvana ever. And it's okay. And we're all good. And your penis, it's nothing wrong with penis size. Your penis is fine. You're doing great. This is just the facts.
Should we talk about size myth? Just briefly?
Yes. Let's do it.
Just because you said
Meadow,
it. I just think I have been with all different shapes and sizes. And if you make it work, you make it work, baby. Like it's all the same stuff we've been talking about, but I'd love for you to speak to it more.
Yeah, I think there's a huge myth about size. And what makes me so, like, my heart goes out to men everywhere because they're so obsessed with their penises.
Oh my gosh. It's so
Like,
sad.
so
it's truly, it's sad.
And they're way more obsessive with it than we are.
Yeah.
They think it should be so much bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, the average penis is about 5.5 inches erect. But yet they have this concern that it should be at least 7, 8, 9, whatever they see in porn. And so then ultimately they are disappointing their partners. And the truth is, like, there's so many other ways to be a great lover, right? As we said, mouth, hands, paying attention, going down on your partner, all the things that I think once we can, like, let them know that, and this is actually what feels good, it allows them to kind of calm down and realize, oh, okay, like, there's so many other ways to play. So, like, spend all that time you're obsessing about your penis and channel that into what can I learn about this beautiful body in front of me? What does this vulva want? Like, let's get to know each other.
Yeah.
Let's get to know your vulva and how it can be a great lover, because, you know, that's what's going to do it. Now, here's the thing. I'm not to say that there aren't some women who are with men who are like, you're insane. I need a huge penis. That's what works for me. Of course, there's going to be people like that. There are definitely women who want, and men who want to be with a large penis. Like, that is the source of their arousal, and that works. Because nothing is universal. Everyone wants something different. Yeah. But, and guess what? If your penis is smaller, then those partners are not yours. They're not going to be your partners. But there's also some men who prioritize, for example, large breasts, super large breasts, tall women, long legs. I'm not going to be his girl. And that's okay. That's okay too. So I know that. So it's kind of like, just find your person, and they're going to care about your entire package, but not the package that you think about. It's the entire package, not just your penis package.
It's so true. And also, like, maybe if we spoke to female pleasure more, I mean, I guess we are now, I mean, way more than when you were starting and there was no one but Dr. Ruth. But I think maybe as we learn that more, maybe it'll help people with penises not be so attached to them, because you're like, oh, 80% of you aren't coming with it anyway. Yeah. So what does it
like,
matter?
Sweetie, you're not that, like, it's not that important. Like, relax.
Exactly.
Like, let's.
You don't even, like, if you bring your penis in, you do, you don't. Like, and again, people are like, oh, you're kidding me. I love the penetration. And I love penetration too. It's not that we all do, but we're just saying it's not the end all be all. It's like part of the recipe that we need.
Totally.
So that's how I want to do it.
I love what you said about, like, getting curious about your partner and, like, being excited about the body that's in front of you. I think, like, personally, like, in my, oh God, I hope he doesn't mind me sharing anything about our sex life. I'm going to text him later and be like, hey babe, we talked all about our sex life today on the internet, whatever. The point is that we like, what makes our sex life great is we're both so curious about the other person. And we were literally having this conversation last night at dinner with some friends. I was with a couple of my girlfriends. We like joke that we can categorize men into, like, 2 categories. Like, they love pussy or are attracted to women. Obviously, there's people that fall in the in-between. But, like, we joke. Obviously, it's just a joke here, team. But, like, we categorize men in that way.
What do you mean they love pussy or they love women? What do you mean? What's the difference?
Like, or, like, attracted to women. So, like, we talk about it in the way that, like, men have sex. Like, men that we've been with, at least. Okay. Where it's, like, the men that, let's say, are attracted to women, the men in that category, like, yeah, but it's more about their pleasure. They know they're going to come. Like, they obviously, like, are attracted to women because they're sleeping with a woman and they love women in that way, but it's more just about them. Then the men that fall into the category of, like, love pussy are the ones that are, like, they're really fucking curious about you. Like, they want to get to know your body. They want to understand your body. And, like, you know that they love pleasuring you. And so it's like a fun little game that we play where we're like, which one are they? But I don't know. From my experience, men that fall into the category of love pussy category, they're the ones that you have the best sex life with because they're really curious about you. And that's what it is. You're curious about each other's pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that binary. I think it's kind of true. I think I totally see that. I used to joke. I'm like, there's just some guys maybe that just aren't into it. They're like, it's not my thing. Like, it's like, I love all the things about sex, but like the person take it or leave it. And then there's the ones who are like, let me get in there. Like, what does it smell like, look like, taste like? Like, wow, did you ever notice this little vein here? And you're like, I love that. And then I'm always wondering, can you ever convert the men that aren't into it? Like, if you're just,
It's a good
I
question.
always think it's like tomatoes. Like, some people love tomatoes and some people don't. And do you ever become like a tomato lover if you're not? Like, I don't know if you're just born this way. They're like, nope, I'm never going to venture over into the vagina corridor. Like, it's never going to be a thing. And like, that's okay too, but just know who you're going for. Like, I actually want someone who's into it. And the ones who are.
Right.
That's so interesting because I loved what you said earlier about growth mindsets and like a growth mindset when it comes to sex. And I feel like that's kind of like a cool place to play with that. Like, I wonder if, sexuality, like we're just assuming in this case, the men are sexually attracted to women baseline. But then I wonder if maybe like working on yourself or learning to have a growth mindset or going to therapy allows you to like play in that category in a way where you're like not attached to the shame. Like to me, it's like shame and fear is what holds them back in some of the love women category or attracted to women category. So that might be
absolutely.
Can we before we get it, because I know we have so many community questions, but selfishly, I need to talk about sex as a spiritual practice with you first.
Yes.
Tell me let's tantra, like discovering kinks after healing, like sex after trauma, just say all the things.
Oh my God. Well, if you want to direct it in particular, is there anything, like, I mean, but yeah, all of it, sex. Okay. To start with like mindfulness and sex.
Yeah.
Like I think I've been a practicer. I practice a lot of mindfulness for a very long time. I've had a meditation practice probably for like 25 years.
Cool.
So it's been like a really important part of my path. And I still, you never arrive, of course. It's a journey, like being mindful and meditative, all the things. But what I've realized is that the more present you are with your partner in the moment, the more you're going to be able to connect to what is in the moment and understanding your partner and your body and what you want. So some of the biggest challenges with sex are that I always say, like, there's like these things called the pleasure thieves. I write about this in my book. Stress, trauma, and shame are like the three things that are bringing us out of the moment. I'm so worried about my penis size or my breasts or how I'm doing the move. Is this a good blowjob? My partner, did I bet his ex gave a better blowjob? All these things pull us out of the moment, right? So that's anti-spiritual, anti-connected, anti-mindful. So when you can be with someone where you're like truly grounded in the moment, like every time you're with a new partner, it's like a new time to create your own sexual experience together. And so for me, like sex is the presence. You can bring that to the moment and do the practice. Like I do this all the time. Like if my mind's wandering and I'm like, oh, like I didn't finish this work email or I don't really feel connected. All the things are in my head. Either I'm just like, I'll stop. I'll be like, you know what? I'm not really ready to go forward right now with this sexual situation. Or I'll try to do a practice. And this is something great for grounding in the moment. If I find that my mind's tripping and not connected and not mindful, I immediately think of the five senses. And I'll say because anxiety, stress, and worry can't live in presence. So I'll think right now, if I go, okay, five senses. What am I smelling? Okay, like I'm smelling this vanilla scented candle. What am I feeling? My hands are on my partner's body. What am I hearing? I'm hearing my partner's breath or my breath. And I go through all five. What am I touching? Like my partner's waist. It grounds you immediately in the moment. So I can't be living in just, and I might have to do that 10 times, but it brings me back to the moment. So for me, that whole practice, like if you meditate or if you any practice, you go to yoga, you can bring that into the bedroom, and I think it will help so many things because then you take that attention back. You go, okay, what am I feeling? Oh, I'm actually feeling my partner's hands on my body now, and I'm back to the moment. Because when you're out of the moment, you like pleasure and stress can't live in the same moment. So if you can find a way to like ground it, that's really one of my practices. And also even with my partner, like if I'm stressed out or we're both not connected, I'm like, can we just stop? I want to give people permission to know that once sex gets started and if it's escalating to a point where you're not ready, like I was really into making out now, but how are my pants off already? Like I wasn't ready for that. Yeah. I'll literally be like, oh, babe, can we hold for a minute? Like, can we just stop and breathe? And obviously to be the partner who's down with this, because if we're worried that our partner like, really want to breathe, then maybe they're not your partner. But my guy's like, yeah, babe, let's do it. And we'll sit and he probably needed it too, and we'll breathe, and like automatically we look into each other's eyes, or we're just breathing together, and then we connect and we reset, and knowing that sex doesn't have to be linear. It's okay to start, stop, and bring it back. So I'm always trying to create, because I know now I'm so in tune that if I'm scattered or stressed or worried, the sex is just not going to go well for anybody.
We got a question, so bringing in a little community question that was exactly about this, but it was about masturbation. And it was like, they say, how do you get out of your own head when you masturbate? So these are great tips that you can translate into that.
Okay, well, I have a whole chat. I write a lot or talk a lot about mindful masturbation. And to me, that's like the most excellent practice to do that. Because most masturbation, we want to just go in and like hit it and quit it. Like I'm going to rub one out. I know it feels good. And then I'm going to move on, right? I got this vibrator, this thing, and like, it's over. I'm done. But with mindful masturbate, which is fine too. We need stress relief. You want an orgasm and go about the day. I'll fall asleep. But mindful masturbation is the practice of really, really, truly being like in the moment and present. And you're really just focusing on your breath and your sensations. And the goal is not orgasm. The goal is exploration. So you're just kind of sitting there and you're like slowly just sort of getting curious about how it feels to move your hands over your body. Like, how does it feel on my nipples? How does it feel if I touch the nape of my neck? And you might have to keep going back to the moment because your mind's tripping like, well, where's the orgasm or where's the next thing? You keep bringing it back. It's the most like synergistic, I think, mindful meditative. I always call it meditate, masturbate, manifest. Like I have candles and
This is like literally how, Emily, this is exactly how I healed my sex trauma was mindfulness, like orgasming or mindfulness, masturbation and manifesting with my orgasms while I did mindful I can't even say all the M's. I'm freaking out because you're preaching. Oh my God, yes!
Oh, we gotta talk about sex magic after.
Wait, I want to just say one thing real quick that I think
I knew you were going to be all over the sex magic.
I'm so into it. One thing that I think is just so important to reiterate is the same, it just goes back to the same thing you were saying about communication and the importance of communication outside of the bedroom so you feel confident in was, once again, having a mindfulness practice outside of all of this allows you to work on a muscle that you can then flex in the moment and like experiment with. That is like such a key piece of where mental health and sex are so aligned is like all these self-care practices outside and independent is everything that is supportive in the moment. Please talk about sex magic. This is so my favorite shit in the entire world.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's
well,
so great.
I mean, the thing is, I think it goes right back to the meditate, masturbate, manifest, where the whole like sex magic from when I know, and I haven't really practiced it as much, but I do know the whole thing of like when you are like, because how I do it is I like to set up with every morning with some meditation. Some days it's 20 minutes, and it's just 2 minutes. And what's really important, side note, is giving yourself permission that you're just doing it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like, please don't let your spiritual practice be another thing that you are trying to be perfect at. Judge yourself.
Yep.
So then I will do that. And then like I'll keep like a vibrator in the shower, like get a great waterproof vibe. So it's there, it's front and center. And then, or do in your bed, wherever, then I would like masturbate. So I would meditate, masturbate. And then during the masturbation, and this is where I think the sex magic is when you have your orgasm is when you sort of manifest. You're like, you sort of shout out, I'm having an orgasm to the universe because it's such a divine, feminine presence. Your orgasm is a spiritual practice. So in that moment, if you can kind of channel it all in the moment and sort of state it, yell it, feel it deeply, embodiment, and release that thing that you want, that would be the magic part of it, right?
Yes.
During the orgasm or during the, bringing that all in, the intentionality of it. It could be, and the manifesting part could be orgasm. It could be writing it down in a journal and then orgasming it. So different ways of like just connect. I think the whole purpose of that is just connecting your orgasm with your manifestation in like the same moment because you're connected to the divine, to the universe.
Have you ever tried it with a partner? I've never tried it with a partner.
I haven't either. I usually do just when I'm masturbating. That's interesting.
So you do this too?
I do it.
Oh, no,
this
we
is
talk about
literally
this all the
what
time.
healed me.
Oh my God.
I'm obsessed with manifesting while I'm masturbating. And I literally, the exact same practice as you is I will do a 20-minute meditation and like getting present and meditating will make me horny to want to masturbate. That leads me to then journal afterwards about my manifestation. I do the exact same thing all this year. It completely healed my sacral chakra.
I love that it heals your trauma. I'm so glad we're talking about this. It'll be so helpful.
We have
so
a lot of
many your
questions about
listeners.
this.
And we
Go
have
ahead,
listeners
Meadow.
just because I've openly shared, just to clue you in, Emily, I've openly shared about how like even specific positions, like I trigger warning for anyone. I've had sex trauma in a specific position, doggy, which then later, like what was that, 6 months ago now, Gabby? I had sex in that position with my partner now, who's the love of my life. We've been together for years, is incredible. And like it was all fine and dandy. And the second we were done, just bawling because we had sex in that position. And he had made me feel so safe and so loved and so pleasurable and nice, and something that had made me feel so unsafe for so long. It just made me lose my mind. And my whole goal for 2022 was to heal my sex trauma. That was my only New Year's resolution, was heal my sacral chakra, heal my sex trauma. So I've been just doing all these practices, and that specifically mindfulness, masturbation, manifestation is what monumentally changed it for me.
Oh my God. I
So
love
thank you for sharing about it. Thank you.
I know.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing about it in real time, because I think a lot of us have sexual traumas, and when and thinking that like we just kind of have to like live with it, but you can really turn, if you are with a loving partner who understands like this is the stuff that isn't working for me or is a trigger on me. It's a really beautiful thing when you can turn your trauma and make it a source of your eroticism.
Yes.
If you can flip it,
Totally.
right? It becomes
So
then it can actually
empowering.
become a source of your arousal. It's
Yes.
so empowering.
It is really
And
empowering.
it does so much
Taking
for
the
your
power back.
self-worth. Oh my God. It's everything.
Yeah.
The confidence to conquer more things. Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that you shared that. It's so helpful.
Okay, let's give our community some answers, because I could selfishly take up your time so much. Like I can't even handle it.
This just shows that we're like on point of what we need to be talking about, because all the things we're talking about, we have questions about.
Oh,
so
perfect.
Starting with the trauma, somebody asked, how do I overcome shame after an assault and feel sexy about myself again?
Such a good question. I think it's some of the stuff that we're talking about, because shame is so deeply ingrained in who we are, from such a young age too. Like, first off, the shame could come from a cultural upbringing where it wasn't okay to be sexual. So maybe you heard a message at a really young age that like, if you masturbate, your sex is not just for procreation, like you're a bad person. I think for so long women have felt shame around even just desiring sex or wanting sex, but specifically if you have a sexual assault or trauma, it sounds like, and then you blame yourself for it. So then you've got all this internal messaging, and it's just really hard to feel sexual again. So I think the first step is like just even knowing it. So this listener was able to just kind of hone in and like, I want to be here sexually, but this shame part is holding you back. So that's like the first thing, which I think is great, is to get there. It does really help to work with like a trusted counselor around it. I do think that if she's actually had, you say she had sexual assault? So,
she said yes.
Okay. So I think a lot of that helps with having some trauma therapy. I think EMDR therapy is really, you guys,
me too.
That was really great.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love EMDR therapy. That was huge for me, because essentially it rewires the neural pathways in your brain. So whatever your trauma is, when it happens, for example, doggy style, for some people it could be like walking to a parking garage or making out with someone, whatever it is triggering. But what the EMDR does is through this practice with a practitioner, which side note I love, because you don't have to go in for 20 years. It actually works a lot quicker. And the neural pathways of your brain, like the neuroplasticity, that we can actually rewire our brain around a certain event, so it no longer is as triggering, which is probably why you had the tears, because you were like, wow, I was able to do this thing that previously was like, yeah, I was going to say brought you to your knees, but you're already on your knees in it. So anyway. But you get the point. I know. You're like, brought you to your knees, but really, literally, I'm figuratively, but that's what happened too. So but yeah, so these things work. So then, so I think that that's really helpful. To recognize, like, I don't have to do this alone. I'm recognizing my trauma. I'm finding a great trauma practitioner. And then through that and finding, I think you actually just better describe that is the process of coming through, is recognizing it, owning it, and being with a partner that you can say, these are the things that are going to make me feel uncomfortable, I have found. And so I'd love to work with you on moving past it. So to me, does that answer the question was, how do I move past it, right? Or was that,
yes. How do I overcome shame? Yeah.
Overcome it. I think it's therapy. I think it's finding a partner that you feel safe and vulnerable with. And can we just say that like enough of the partners, and you probably got this some questions here. Oh, but my partner won't talk about it. My partner's not down with it. My partner might not be your partner. Get a new partner. like it's not about like why? Like unless your partner's like, I've never done this before. I'm curious. Tell me more. Like my partner, and believe me, I've had a million partners like, therapy's not my thing. I'm like, okay, well then you're not my thing. Or inner work isn't my thing. But if your partner's like, tell me more, I'm so curious. Tell me about it, and they want to work with you. I think a lot of us, what we do wrong in this area is that we think we have to go it alone.
Yeah.
I got to figure it out on my own. I had trauma happen to me alone. I'm going to solve it on my own. But the more you could bring in really healthy resources, I think is the best way to learn to work with it and move past it. And side note, you don't just move past it. I don't think it ever goes away, but you learn how to manage it, and then it's less triggering. And it could even be turned into a source of arousal, but it's always going to be with you, and that's okay too.
Second part of this question, because I kind of want to stay on this sex after trauma situation.
Good, yeah.
What if, because they're asking also about like how to feel sexy and themselves again. So what if you're single and you're not interested in having sex right now, but you just want to feel sexy for yourself and feel pleasure again for yourself?
Yeah, thank you for bringing it back to that. I thought here's the thing about feeling sexy again. It's a journey, just like everything else. And it's really a practice of embodiment, of feeling more connected to your body. A lot of times we don't feel sexy because we feel like we are completely disconnected from who we are as a sexual being. Like if we had a cell, we might not want to even touch ourselves. We might not want to be sexual, feel sexual. And so then when we're with somebody, we're like, why can't I just get it on again? It's because we are sort of been abusing our body, even mentally, saying, like, I hate my body, or I don't like the way I look, all these things. So I think how you learn to be sexy again is to learn to kind of move in your body, start doing things. Like I think movement is really important, like a movement practice. Could be exercise, but I think dance is really helpful. Getting comfortable in it being naked. Yeah. Like really exposure therapy. Looking at yourself in the mirror, in your room. People like, sometimes it sounds hokey or cliche. And I never know if it's because I've been saying it for so many years or people like, oh, really? I'm going to do that. But how else are you going to, if sexuality is about our own energy and what we're bringing, it's not about anyone else making us feel sexy. It's truly like learning to like release tension and be like, I am a sexual being. So for me, like how I did this, and we do practices in grad school all the time, like literally get naked in the mirror and say like, okay, I might not like all these things about my body. What do I love? Okay, but I kind of like the nape, the way my ear, this little slope here to my neck, down to my shoulder. That's kind of a sexy part. Like even if it's just like, oh, my hands are kind of sexy, my inner elbow. It's sort of just giving attention towards your body parts, whether it's like exposure, you're getting comfortable being naked in your bedroom after a shower rather than just lights are off, but like rubbing lotion on yourself, looking in the mirror and like forcing yourself to like, this is my body. I'm going to learn to connect with it and like it. Even if it's not love it, like it's like this whole like love your body thing. What if it's just like body neutrality? What if it's I don't actively hate my body?
Yes.
What if it's like I'm actively working on just sort of being cool with it? Like we're in this together for life. How are we going to do that, right? And so I also think the mindful masturbation practice that I talked about is a really great way to learn to feel sexy, because if you're not distracting yourself with porn or thoughts or other things, but you're just like, I'm actually just going to get curious about how it feels when I move my hands all through my body and feel the pleasure I can bring myself. Well, that might really help me again start to feel sexy and realize like my body's freaking amazing. I can give myself pleasure. I can have great orgasms. And I think that's all like a practice for starting to feel sexy again.
I don't think it's hokey at all. I literally maybe last week was brushing my teeth and I was like standing there like this. And I was like, and I just like kind of like moved and like held. I was like, what if I just was so hot right now? And I like looked at myself in the mirror. You know what I mean? Like in those small little moments where I'm like, I could stand here like a little dope, or I could like look really hot and I'm just brushing my teeth. No one was there. Yeah. Aaron wasn't home. You know, it was just me by myself. But just those little, even in like dull random moments, it does help the way you like carry yourself, feel your energy through your body, like
It
move
is
yourself
true. It
around.
is.
It's not hokey at all.
So
And
true.
breathing, you guys,
It's so
another
true.
big thing for me that helps is breathing
Yes.
practices. I think like breath work and meditation, like I cannot emphasize that enough because it's all energy. So sexual energy / feeling sexy is all
Mhm.
related. And I think that for me, when I feel the most like sexual into my body, like, well, let's just say this. If I feel stagnant, it's not like I'm walking around and I'm always like the goddess of sexual confidence and esteem. Like it's a practice, right? Everything is. But I know that when I do some breathwork practices and even if it's a few minutes of breathing and I am consciously, intentionally doing a deep breath where I breathe into my pelvic floor, and then granted your breath isn't going into your pelvic floor, but you're feeling it. And maybe you do a little kegel or you do a little squeeze there. And then you like
Mhm.
breathe in, you squeeze it, and then you release it. And you repeat that maybe 10 times, just that activation of your pelvic floor and those muscles of the squeezing. It's like the kegel of the tensing, and it's like that pee stopping muscles where you're stopping and starting the flow of urine. That
Mhm.
is your sexual organs. Those are the muscles responsible for orgasm. Those are the muscles that are responsible for pleasure. And if you think about tantric practices, it truly is all about the circulation of energy from your pelvic floor up to your head, down to your back. It's a circulation of energy.
Yes.
So you circulate and you
Yes.
circulate
Yeah,
it. And so just breath work and practicing, I'm going to do 5 to 10 deep breaths and we have to move the energy. And then you have an undulation of your spine and your pelvic floor is moving in and out. Like to me, that gets me really in my body and starts to feel more, I guess, sexy and in touch. Because
That's
our
a
energy
great
is
tip.
stagnant. A lot of it's going around with it's cut off. We are
Yes.
completely, literally, we do not know what is going on down south. So if you start to move it and break that barrier, to me, that really helps to flow the energy and keep it alive.
Oh, I love that we're talking about this.
And that's like me too. That's another visualization you can do during sex. Like you could literally picture it from the bottom of your spine up and down, or like moving to each chakra up and back and working your way up. Like that's another cool example of besides the 5 senses, you could do something like that with a partner
I do
all the time.
yeah, absolutely.
It helps you get so present. I mean, selfishly, like Meadow knows and the listeners know, I'm like really big into my acupuncture journey right now. And that's all about moving energy. And she makes me get really present of like feeling certain parts of my body and like the energy flowing. So that's like a really great mindfulness thing. It all comes back to mindfulness, guys. Okay, let's see.
It really does.
Okay, is it normal? They go bad word choice, I know, but is it normal to only have sex every once in a while, basically once a month?
With a partner?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the thing about normal and the time. People love to ask, how many times should we be having sex? So we're like normal and typical. And I'm never going to give people a number. I'm not going to say, well, it sounds like you should have sex like 1.2 times a week. However, if I know people ask that, it's like, it's really case by case basis. Every couple gets to decide the amount of times that feel good to them. So I think that typically once a month, I would say probably isn't enough. That's probably why she's asking. Now, only because, wait, let me back up for a minute. If both you and your partner, like, we feel so great with once a month. It is, we get our needs met. We love it. Every other day of the month, we're holding hands. We're doing other things that really enhance our intimacy and we feel great. But usually people are asking because there's one partner that like wants a little bit more. And I want to remind everyone that there is a higher desire partner in every relationship and a lower desire partner. Unfortunately, 2 high desire people barely come together. And if they do, it's only the beginning of the relationship and then they settle in. So knowing that and that the lower desire partner has the power in the relationship because they're the one who's deciding, they're like essentially the gatekeeper to sex. And they're deciding when you're having sex, there's going to take some communication and some work around in couples realizing like, I only want it once a month, but you want it once a week. Like, how can we kind of compromise here and find what that looks like? And so maybe it's like scheduling sex and saying like, no, Saturday nights is going to be our night. And we're going to try to find other ways to connect. Another thing I want to say here is that a lot of times couples are craving sex. They say sex, but what they really mean is intimacy. They want a night of maybe just connecting or erotic massage, or maybe it's mutual masturbation where we know we're both getting off, but it's not penetrative sex. If I could do anything or a few things in this life, it would be de-emphasizing the focus on penetration as being sex. Because sometimes it doesn't feel good. It's that time of month. It's not even how we're going to get off. But what if we could do other things? Like my partner and I do this thing where it's like once every like few weeks. Like we try to do it now more regularly. We're like on like a Monday, let's say, I have a massage table and like it's one night where I'm just giving him, I'm giving him a massage. It's all about his pleasure. And then there's another night where it's about me only. So then we don't have to worry about giving back, but we're receiving, and it's just like really, really hot. So we've worked about ways to kind of make sure that we're getting our needs met. Because it can be really stressful too sometimes to be like, you got off, no, I got to get off. So I guess I just encourage people to figure out what they actually want when they say sex and finding what works.
Amazing. We have a couple of more questions for you from the audience. Let's see. Okay. Started by hooking up on the regular. It's been over a year now. And now he never wants to have sex and claims it's ED. Help.
Oh, he's erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Huh. Did she say how old he? Okay. So she's saying that they started hooking up on the regular for how many months? Or just
It's been
months?
about a year. It's
been
about
over a year.
Over a year. They've been hooking up.
Hooking up meaning it's like casual.
Yeah, I'm assuming.
And now he doesn't want to have sex because he's not able to get hard maybe and stay hard. And which is common. That happens. But I think it's a little bit about he probably has some shame but also some confusion about it. He should definitely go to a doctor and like that's not okay. Like I think that it's not okay to say like I just got ED or I just got this problem or I have pain and let's just not have sex. Get to the bottom of it. Why is he experiencing erectile dysfunction? Like, what is actually happening? Is he on a certain medication? Is he have a lot of stress? Is he worried? Is he anxious? So he probably feels bad that he's not able to stay erect and stay as hard as he wants to. So for me, that would really be a health thing. Like I would have him go get checked out by his doctor, do some blood work, and figure out what makes him what that is, because I don't think it's okay to opt out of sex and say like I just can't do it because I'm having this challenge right now. But like she could be like loving him, be like I understand you, babe, but let me support you in figuring out what this ED is all about, because you don't have to live with any of these challenges, whether you have pain during sex or erectile dysfunction. Figure out what it is and get to the bottom of it, because usually it's a symptom of something else. Could be low testosterone, again, stress, worry, anxiety, medication.
Like that was a great question to end on, because the rest of the questions that you guys sent in, which were amazing, we sort of talked about. There was a lot about mindfulness, a lot about like coming back, figuring out your pleasure, how to put your pleasure first. I feel like we really hit all of the marks. I feel like I learned so much today, and I think that I know a lot about sex.
To hear that.
I'm comfortable with talking about sex, and I feel good in my sex life, and empowered. But like I learn so much every time I talk to you or I listen to one of your podcasts and read your interviews. So I'm just so grateful that you came today, because I know this was so helpful for our listeners.
Oh my God, such a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I think you guys are doing great work. It's really important topics you're talking about. So yeah, you're so welcome.
Thank you. Open invitation.
Yeah, I would love it. Oh, thank you both. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the Thoughts May Vary podcast every Monday.